It looks like about that time, so I think we're going to go ahead and get rolling. Welcome to everybody that was a holdover from the prior presentation. Welcome to any new attendees who have just joined us. Yeah, we've got our second presentation lined up, and I'm going to give a quick intro to Amanda Gelb from Lyft. She's going to be giving us a talk on sharing the power rapid research. Yeah, I went through the full spiel of what this presentation is all about. I think we've all done enough virtual webinars over the past couple of years that we've got this pretty much nailed down. So this is a quicker half-hour presentation. So I'm going to get out of the way, let Amanda do her thing, and then I'll circle back at the end to lead any Q&A. If you have questions for Amanda, feel free to throw those into the Q&A, into the chat, and we will make sure that they make their way to her. Amanda, all yours.
Yeah, hi everyone. So excited to be here. I'm just gonna share my screen with you all as we begin. Thank you to Bill and everyone organizing for having me. All right, let's get into it. So, as researchers, we do a lot. Our roles are complex. I'm willing to bet if you're listening in right now, your role contains multitudes. For example, here are just some of the things that I've taken on in my role as a researcher across my career. Now, the beauty of what we do is that it spans disciplines and approaches. So some days I'm an anthropologist like Jane Goodall, observing people in their natural environments. And other days I'm inhabiting the persona of Sherlock Holmes, looking beyond what the pieces say to what's at the heart of the data. So I got this new job a few years back at Lyft, and I'm going to be their first researcher in the New York office, focusing on this complex space that involves both riders and drivers, the pickup part of the experience. Cool. I'm nervous, I'm excited. And when I first joined Lyft New York, the office was small enough to hear every desk conversation, and all of us were crammed into one narrow floor. Now, I've been around the research world long enough to wonder where on the continuum my teammates are. So I found prior to research on the scene, most teams, or companies for that matter, fall into one of two camps: the cricket side of the scale, absolute and total silence, just eyes blinking. You're a researcher? Blink. What's that? Blink, blink. I've never worked with research before. Or the other extreme. You as a researcher are an absolute celebrity, insatiable demand. People are elbowing each other to get some of your time and attention. When I arrived at Lyft, it was definitely more of the crickets scenario. So this is where I went to work. It's really lonely out there as a solo researcher. And so truly it was up to me to drum up interest, like that was my job. So I got out the metaphorical megaphone and started running lunch and learns where I shared what research does. I had one-on-one coffee chats and meetings with about 60 of the 80 people in the office. I spoke at all hands. I went to engineering huddles just to learn what teams were building. And I reminded managers to bring up research and the opportunity to test ideas to their, everyone that they were managing, everyone that they were in meetings with at their respective gatherings. I also did a small research project on a mutually interesting space for most of the teams. So I built out a rider journey across the rideshare experience. And I included things like users' emotions and workarounds they do in their Lyft rides. And the requests began to trickle in. So a designer had just launched this new feature, pickup notes, which is a way for us to communicate some information about pickup spots. So a rider, for example, would share a description of themselves or a place, like let's say you're standing outside a McDonald's or you're wearing a purple sweater, that kind of thing. They wondered if I could test it tomorrow. Then data scientists were noticing some interesting behavioral data that was taking place in the ride itself, but they didn't know why. And they wanted researchers' help determining what happens in the car, something our app doesn't tell us, and only research can help unpack with riders and drivers themselves. Was I free next week? A product manager was operating in the dark about the biggest pickup pain points and wanted research to help uncover, to help with an upcoming roadmap that the team would be building for these airport rides, and was wondering, could we test this in a few days' time? And my personal favorite, a group of very creative engineers who had heard the drumbeats of research across the office, wondered if I might help test their hackathon projects and pressure test some features before they launched. How about doing some research together at the end of the week? All really interesting projects, no? All worthy of researchers' efforts, right? Except that they all seemed time sensitive, and it was just me, one researcher with all of this demand. I wanted to do a good job. I had created this demand. It was overwhelming and stressful. From this place, Rapid Research was born. Rapid Research is a self-serve program with training at key moments, a representative panel of customers, and synthesis support. So self-serve. As researchers, we know a lot, and this is where we share that knowledge and bolster our cross-functional partners. We become coaches, counselors, paving the path to research for our teams. We have a lot to share, so it's important that as we're paving this path, as we're enabling our partners to step into a research role themselves, that we're equipping them with the tools they need to be successful. And I have found trainings at key moments of Rapid Research do just that. We bring in real customers for this research. I found 6 to be the magic number, and I'll often recruit 1 or 2 as floaters to fill in case we get a no-show. Lastly, after running this program a few times, I got feedback from my internal team that the synthesis part, looking at the data, determining what's a pattern, what's an insight, that was particularly hard for my partners to do, and my support was needed there. So I started offering office hours. So Rapid Research teams could book a session with me to review their notes and research sessions, and together we collaborate on the findings. So how does it all work? Here's how I run it at Lyft, and you can take what's helpful for yourself or your teams. This became the sound of Rapid Research. Kind of catchy, right? It really got people's attention. And in trying to get people to submit their projects, I would kick off my pitches by sounding this gong. Okay, so once you've got some projects submitted, it's about identifying the right projects. So I would meet with all interested parties. And in the beginning, this was a huge unlock to meet people, come into contact with them, find out what they want to learn, hypotheses they had. As the program evolved, that became way too time consuming for me. So we moved to an asynchronous intake form. And that form was the perfect forcing function for teammates to have to think through what they wanted to learn and elaborate on goals on their own first. In the early days of Rapid Research, if you wanted to be in the program, you were in. There were no questions asked. And while that was super effective in bringing people into the process, some projects simply weren't suited for this type of research, either because they required a trained researcher to examine the problem, like myself, or the method that was needed. So for example, surveys, multi-phased approaches, context interviews, those are not great for Rapid Research. So what makes for a Rapid Research project? I landed on some criteria for project selection. Urgency. How soon does the team need to make a product decision? Impact. How will the insights be used? What will the impact be? And finally, research fit. Are 20-minute interviews the right way to answer their research questions? And when it comes to research fit in particular, again, it's okay to own what this approach is good for and what it isn't. So Rapid Research works best for approaches like design comparison, usability testing, concept testing, straightforward approaches that can answer a specific question in a short amount of time. Okay, So each project would kick off with a high energy team working session. And I made it mandatory for everyone to have at least one other teammate participate to lessen the load. And so someone was available for backups and note taking. And this is the exact slide that I would share with them to delineate which items fell to me, which items fell to them, and which we shared together. All the pink dots here are what I'm asking the teams to do. And if you look closely, you'll see I ask teams to write their own discussion guide. How are engineers or product managers supposed to write a discussion guide? They're really hard to write, and I do this professionally. So everything that can be a template should be a template. Remember, you are the expert, and this program lets you share that expertise. So it's on you to set everyone else up for success. You can see my intake forms here, and this asks questions like, what decisions are you trying to make? What's your hypothesis? How certain are you that it's true? And in the middle is the main rapid research template. And that links out to mock research plans, discussion guides, note-taking templates, and an insight one-pager. So really everything that you could need to run your research is right there for you to click into. And then at the end there in pink, that's the insights one-pager. And so that, again, when the research is completed, is asking the teams to reflect on the top 3 things that they've learned and pull in some supporting customer quotes. Reminder, it's the non-researchers that are going to be conducting the research. It's the team that makes the discussion guide. It's that same team that is moderating the interviews. So how do they learn to moderate? I created a course on the greatest hits of moderation 101, and I call it Moderate Like a Boss. It's a training all new facilitators take, which gives us some useful tips on interviewing users and has them practice for the last 20 minutes. And I find this practice piece crucial. And so if you are training people in running their own research, don't make that first research session in which they're speaking to a real customer of yours the first time that they are practicing their discussion guide or, trying to train themselves in asking non-leading questions. And of course, asking non-leading questions and these kinds of things, as a moderator are learned over time, of course. You're just trying to get your teammates some tips and tricks for their first interview or two. But essentially what you're trying to do is give them as much confidence and training in advance so that by the time they get to that first session, they're feeling really prepared. All right, so this training gives all those useful tips. It has them practice, like I was saying. And what you're looking at now actually is our internal badging system. So to build the hype for this training, I created an internal digital badge. And so far, over 70 people at our company have been awarded this badge, from UX writers to technical program managers to directors of engineering. And sometimes I get asked to give this training to teams that are running their own research, not part of the rapid research program. So many cross-functional partners have found value in the idea of what it means to moderate well. So here are some of the tips I give the teams. I'll give you an inside peek. The first is reminding them that they are in control very easily, and I'm sure many of us on the call are familiar with this. Our participants might be able to, run away if not guided correctly with the conversation. They never know how much information they should be sharing. Sometimes you get, a one-sentence response from a participant. Sometimes you get paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. So just reminding moderators, you are the one that gets to move the conversation along, pace things, and decide what is shared when. The second is setting clear expectations with their partner. So again, I mentioned at the beginning, there are at least 2 people per team that are going through rapid research. And that other person is taking notes. So if you want someone to take notes, you should be clear on what you want them to be paying attention to. Do you want thematic notes, for example, that are just summarizing what someone is saying? Or do you want more verbatim notes that are word for word what is being shared with you? Do you want to break when you are moderating? Maybe your co-pilot, your teammate there is subbing in and they're moderating a session or 2 while you get to rest. Being interested all the time. This is a classic one. No matter what they are saying, even if you didn't get sleep the night before, or you're bored, or you want to move on, this is a participant that is giving their real time and energy and effort to you. And so you really want to be engaged with what they're saying. But at the same time, you don't want to give anything away. And this poker face is particularly important when we are running, say, concept tests or usability tests. You don't want to tell anyone if they've done the right thing, let's say, or the wrong thing, if they've clicked into what you had hoped they did or they had difficulties. You want to, again, keep that poker face. Don't give anything away. The trail off. So you last had a problem with pickups when you had called the driver. That was, the trail off is really, really valuable in getting the participants to fill in those blanks. Using their own words. So we're guilty of this, particularly those of us that work in technology or really any industry that has its own jargon, which is most industries. You want to use the words that the participants are saying, not the jargon themselves, even if their words are incorrect. You know, if they're talking about a button, but they call it a square or a blob or whatever, you as the moderator should be calling it a square or a blob as well. Mindset wise, lastly, taking a cue from Frozen, just let it go, right? Like no one knows what your discussion guide is. No one knows what it is that you're trying to learn or get across if you totally butchered a question or asked it beautifully. And so as much as you can for the interview, just take a deep breath, let go of your bias, enter that conversation neutrally, and try to relax. All right, so now it's on. Everyone's in the room, it's game day. And this is what the research sessions look like. So we recruit 6 general population customers. Those are those orange C's that you're seeing here. And they rotate through 6 different research team projects, the green T's. And this all happens live. Recently, because of the pandemic, we've been doing it via breakout sessions on Zoom, and it's translated really nicely to remote research. So each team has 20 minutes with each participant with a 5-minute break in between. And then you can see, similar to speed dating, they move on to the next team. So the entire rapid research session lasts roughly 3 hours and 15 minutes. So that pickup notes team, they're sitting in one location while 6 different riders are passing through to weigh in on their feature. There is so much energy and excitement in the room. And for many partners, this is the first time that they are speaking face-to-face with our customers. The second best thing to seeing everyone in action, engaging face-to-face with your customers, is to see those learnings forming, those research wheels turning. So for example, an engineer that didn't know what research was 3 weeks ago is now sharing an insight about the number of usability bugs in a build that she was going to launch the next day. A product manager has learned that luggage is a really complex part of the pickup experience at airports, and that's something that the team needs to design and build for, and they're planning a brainstorm on that the following week. Sharing the learnings puts my teammates in the research hot seat in the best possible way. They own their insights. And the best part of 6 projects getting attention at the same time is sharing those learnings between those groups, that cross-pollination that forms. So that project manager that I just told you about with the luggage, they're actually helping that designer on the pickup notes team think about how to help riders who have their hands full, either with luggage or with groceries. So that pickup notes team is now thinking about the airport's use case when they otherwise wouldn't have had exposure to that team or to their research insights. My favorite moments are overhearing this research get shared in the wild. So let's say an engineer turns to another engineer and says, "No, don't build it that way. Those 3 buttons are too close together for our riders." Or a product manager shares with a teammate in line at lunch that he observed drivers needing more assistance finding a pickup spot, and we should think about how to better help them with a brainstorm to kick off that focus area. After running this program, I definitely became a research celebrity in Lyft's New York office. But more than that, this program became a virtuous cycle for me. So the people that I invested in with trainings and synthesis support got better and better at collecting light feedback the more they participated in rapid research programs. It fostered a learning culture in our office. It gave my teams ownership over the research insights and trust in the process. It created a research community around me. And this has been so successful for us as a company that we have created and are hiring for 3 permanent research teammates whose sole job it will be to run rapid research. Thank you.
All right. Great job, man. And rapid presentation too. Pretty solid. Let's see. Looking at our Q&A, we have one, let's see. We have one from Heidi. I love that you've constructed a qual self-serve approach. Do you see a need for a quantitative approach like this? Why or why not?
Ooh, that's a great question. My expertise is in qual, honestly. I dabble in mixed methods, but I definitely sit more firmly in the qual camp. Quant to a certain effect, like I have seen, let's say surveys, for example, boot camps and trainings and that kind of thing. Like I think they're in the way that there are clear moderation tips, there can be really clear ways that you phrase quantitative questions. So I could definitely see those trainings bubble up for cross-functional partners. For us, at least as a company, we're really precious on when we're reaching out to riders and drivers, and we don't want to oversample, or, sample too much or kind of bother people, as it were. So for us as a team, I would say try to be a little more conservative with sharing that part of the process. Even the recruiting, like I don't have my cross-functional partners do. I either partner with a recruiter or I do the recruiting to make sure, again, that I can control both for quality as well as for who we're tapping to speak to us. So I think, in short, I love the idea of that. I think I would need to think through a little bit more, and maybe we could do that together. What constraints would need to be in place to do that successfully?
Yeah, I've seen it done well in some places and poorly in others, honestly. I mean, but it's quite simple or quite similar rather to your qual approach. It's, taking all these factors in consideration and, policing to a certain extent. I did have one quick follow-up question for you,
Sure.
and this is with regard to your moderator training. So once someone is certified as an Amanda moderator, is there any ongoing training or feedback, after the fact, after they become certified, as it were?
Yeah, I try observe one session. Like I'm also rotating around with the participants to the different groups. And so we have a little break in the middle, and I'll often deliver some light feedback. If there's something that needs to be changed right away, like, ooh, that question is super leading, or ooh, that phrase was not very polite to our riders. Or, if there's something that comes up in the moment that needs to be corrected for that study, I'll share that with the moderators live. Otherwise, I save all kind of feedback and critique, obviously, for after it's done and they've had a breather. Moderation, I'm sure many of us know, can be rather exhausting as well. And so getting, even if it's constructive feedback back after you've had many hours of moderation is not always well received. But yeah, I will definitely share some more tips or some tricks. I also find it's one of those things where if you've gone through the training, you're not, entirely protected per se, or a expert moderator, but having to do that practice. And then one thing that I actually didn't mention is that I also really encourage teams to do a dry run. So again, before they're showing up to that first participant, they've practiced for 20 minutes in the session with me. I, of course, have reviewed their discussion guide and, made changes to it, or other researchers or teammates have done that for them as well. And then they've gone through it live with someone who wasn't on their team. So they understand the pacing, they understand, the answers that they're getting from their questions. And again, not that makes them an expert moderator, 20-minute session and one trial run, but it really helps smooth that gap, as they're going from 0 to 1, never having moderated before, to moderating 6 back-to-back interviews.
And this is such an uncomfortable concept for many in our industry, and especially on teams that have been, really well established and really well staffed. The limited resources that you're dealing with, it sounds like, I mean, it's kind of by necessity, but what it produces is something really neat.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a lot of questions rolling in, so I will jump to the next one from Taylor. This is incredible and fascinating. I'm curious how you recruit participants and incent them for rapid research. Also, how frequently are you able to conduct rapid research sessions?
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Those are great questions. Okay, so the first piece was recruiting and incentivizing. For that, when I first started, I don't think I included this, but I tried, oh gosh, this is wild. I tried to get the perfect mix of riders or drivers per what we were testing. So if it was airport rides, like I gave for my example, or pickup notes, I would try have at least half, let's say 3 riders have taken an airport ride, let's say in the past week, to make it super recent. But then for pickup notes, we were curious how riders and drivers were communicating with each other. And so I tried to get riders who had either recently, in the past week or so, called a driver or sent them a text message, that kind of thing. And then I was like, okay, but wait a minute, does that bias are those riders biasing the other teams because it's a certain type of rider that's reaching out to a driver? Anyway, it was very complex. So I was like, okay, I'll have 2 out of the 6 riders have recently contacted a driver, and I'll have 3 of the riders take an airport ride because that, case study is fine for us. So all of that was really complex and like hair raising for me. And I did it out of the love of, trying to get these teams the best riders for them. And then after doing this a number of times, I just like went straight to general population. And I would say like general population is like what I would underline here if you're recruiting for this type of program. Just because, again, we have such a large, diverse group of, riders or drivers in our database, or people that are riding with rideshare. They're relatively easy to find. So incentivizing them is not a problem, Taylor, to your question. In terms of letting them know kind of what's happening here, I let everyone know what they're getting into in advance. So I say, hey, we'd love to have you in a session, just so you know, you're going to be hearing 6 different ideas. It's going to be in 20-minute increments. I promise I'll give you a 5-minute break in between to clear your head. And when I first did the first few rounds of rapid research, I just had a 15-minute break in the middle. So you did 3 interviews back to back, and then a 15-minute break for everyone, the participants and the researchers, and then 3 more back to back, and then break. And everyone came to me and raised their hand and was like, no, this is a no-go. Like, both from a participant and from a moderator perspective, we need like time to clear our head, regroup, maybe do a quick change to a design, tweak a question, chat with the note taker. For the participants there, to your question, it was about that debrief, time to go to the bathroom or take a breath, or kind of clear the mental cobwebs before they saw a totally different concept or design. And then I think the last part was about the frequency of rapid research. Okay, so for that, it's essentially morphed across our company into different formats and been taken on by different lines of business and organizations, which is kind of cool. And they all run it differently. So there are some rapid research programs, in a different part of the company that are running with a regular cadence every month or every 6 weeks. Other teams are doing it every quarter. Other teams are doing it, with more researcher involvement, like I did in the early days, where they're really partnering closely, but then they're again doing it every few months. Whereas I find the monthly ones, we either have that dedicated researcher in those sessions, and that's the bulk of their role or their entire role, or it's entirely self-serve, like that first question we were talking about with Quant, where like, here are the templates, a recruiter will partner with you on general population, whoever you need, and like you go off and do it, kind of thing. So I find like, depending on how much time the researchers have or how much self-serve it actually is, that frequency varies.
Okay. And another tactical question from Geraldine. What do you do if one of the 6 teams dropped out or wasn't available for the speed dating?
Yeah, Joan, that's a great question. In the way that I recruit floaters for participants, so I'll have an extra participant or 2 sometimes just waiting in the wings in case someone doesn't show up or they're not as quality as we would like. I have that for teams as well. So when they take that intake form that I ask everyone to fill out in the beginning, I will say, is this like a primary essential thing that you need to get done right now, or are you willing to be kind of like a team in waiting and we'll let you know a few weeks before this happens, or like a week or two before it happens. And a fair amount of teams say like, this isn't urgent for me. You know, we get way more submissions as part of it. We get way more submissions than we're able to have teams for every rapid research that we've ever run. So that's, again, because I built it up and, you know, kind of intentionally put it out there once people got a sense of it. And this is true, not just for rapid research, but for research, right? Like I have found as a researcher, people don't know what it is and they're not asking for it and they're not engaging with you. But once they get a taste of it, like it's off to the races and you've got all of that demand. So yeah, we have all of these teams that are signing up, and I tell teams like, if you're willing to be kind of waiting in the wings, we'll give you priority next time. Or I sometimes I sweeten the deal if I need to. But yeah, in long answer to your question, we do have some teams who have agreed to jump in with sometimes only 1 week's notice if another team drops out.
And it looks like we're right up against it on time. Stephanie had a question that you kind of answered in your last with regard to just prioritization and deciding which projects. Real quick, 30 seconds. What about dissemination of the work?
Yeah, great question. We do a lunch and learn. So that I ask teams to invite their other teammates and we'll share those findings then. Again, some of the other rapid research teams have a deck. They have like a 3-pager or a 5-pager everyone needs to fill out template. And then they have this big presentation where all of the teams learn from each other and you can invite whoever you want. What I used to do live when we were doing them in person is I would do just like a quick huddle with everyone, which was my favorite part. And everyone would just share like a moment, a something, a quote, like whatever it was that was sticking out to them. And that was just a really magical moment to hear everyone learning from each other and like organically hear the engineers on one team say, wait a minute, like we thought we would tackle that, but this thing happened to us. We also heard that. So yeah, there are many different ways to bring people together. Those are the 2 that we formalized.
Very cool. All right. Well, I have to kick you out now, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That was fantastic. Very engaging. Appreciate the rapid presentation.
Thank you.
Got a lot of Q&A as a result. So
Good.
well done.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
So
I'm
no
around
break
on
between.
LinkedIn or wherever if you have more questions or want to keep chatting about this.